Hey guys, so if you didn't know, I have a new art show opening on May 30th at Harman Projects in New York City. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my process for this new series of paintings. The show is called DREAMBLEEDER, and it revolves around nightmares. From the beginning, I knew what the show was going to be. I knew where the inspiration was coming from. I knew what the lore was. I even knew what the layout of the show was going to be. But I had absolutely no idea what it was going to actually look like. Like, what the f was I going to paint? I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself when I tackle projects like this, and sometimes it causes this like crazy writer's block, but for art. So I guess it's an art block. Anyway, I kept sketching things that looked very similar to what I've been comfortable drawing and painting the last few years. It didn't feel new. Nothing felt fresh. And I couldn't get myself out of that space. So I went back to an old exercise I used to do when I was a teenager, when I took a lot of inspiration from shapes. Regular shapes were cool, but I was more fascinated with shapes that I'd never seen before. And with this DREAMBLEEDER show focusing so much on nightmares and subconscious thoughts,
it's a dream, Alex! You can do anything you want in here!
I figured I should try to tap into that a little. So basically, like in that Stephen King book, The Dark Half, I pretty much just closed my eyes, held a paintbrush really loosely, and just made random shapes. I used those shapes as jumping off points to start scribbling and challenging myself to make something that felt unique and, most of all, fun to paint. From there, I just kept refining and altering the sketch, making it visually cool to me, while also thinking about what kind of nightmare this would be and what kind of trauma does this monster embody. Then after that, it was just technical. I'm not the most comfortable with any specific material, but I knew I wanted to practice exploring more watercolor and mixed media techniques for these. So I used a combination of watercolors, gouache, ink, and pencil. All of these pieces are painted on cold pressed watercolor paper that I mount to a wood panel before painting. So that way there's no buckling or wrinkling, and I can dump as much water and soak as much color into the paper as I want to. Then it's just kind of watch Tales from the Crypt and paint. With watercolors, it's best to go light to dark for the most part, since they're transparent, but using some more solid opaque gouache on top of it can sometimes help brighten up some of the muddy areas or add back in some highlights that you might have painted over. That lack of control is what I like most about watercolors. You can't predict or replicate the effects 100% no matter how experienced you are. Unless you're Alex Ross, I guess. There's a few other techniques I used on these, like you'll see me cutting out a frisket stencil to block off some areas so I can splatter some paint in a slightly more controlled way. I also used a little bit of liquid frisket for some of the smaller areas, like the eyes and the teeth. The thing about watercolors is that they have to dry completely if you want to layer them. Mixing them while they're still wet has a specific effect, which I love, but when I want to layer them and not mix them and kind of multiply them, they have to dry completely. So there's a lot of drying time cut out of this video. And then yeah, it's just back and forth with detailed brushwork for some of the sharper lines and darker area, and looser light layers of coloring until I feel like there's enough mass there to see this nightmare actually come to life. That's about it. Thanks for watching, and now back to me trying to convince you that nightmares are real. See ya.